Legends of catastrophic floods are found in texts from ancient cultures all across the globe, and they share some strange similarities. A man builds a massive ship, the world floods, and the man waits out the storm on the boat. But there's one story, in particular, that has captivated archaeologists and treasure seekers for centuries. Noah's Ark. Many people over the years have falsely claimed to have found the remnants of the biblical boat, but one team recently made a discovery that could finally be the real deal. Experts searching for pieces of Noah's Ark make epic announcement. According to the story that appears in the Bible in the Quran, God asked Noah to build a giant ark where he can wait out a world-destroying storm. But the holy texts weren't Noah's first appearances. His story debuted centuries earlier in Mesopotamia, though he was called Ziusudra then. Later, he showed up in a Babylonian story under the name Gilgamesh. Noah's been talked about for a long time. Given the mystery and power behind the original story, it's no wonder that Hollywood has fallen in love with Noah. As the story of his ark became more and more popular, explorers began launching expeditions to search for what's left of the boat. But modern researchers are conflicted on the true story behind the ark. Some interpret the story literally, while many believe the flood might have been melting glacial ice as a result of the conclusion of the Ice Age. One explorer, Robert Ballard, tried to prove this theory in 1989. He theorized that the ark could have sunk to the bottom of the Black Sea after the glacial floods receded. But what he found surprised him. After exploring hundreds of square miles beneath the sea, Ballard's team miraculously discovered a 7,000-year-old settlement destroyed by floodwaters, but no signs of an ark. Though he ended up empty-handed, he wasn't the last to go searching for the ship. See, many ark maniacs believe two blurry government photos of Mount Ararat, the supposed biblical resting place of the ark, are hiding a secret that could confirm the ship's location. So in 2004, when businessman Daniel McGivern set out to explore the anomaly on Mount Ararat, many were disappointed when he was denied access by the Turkish government. Another team went up into the Alborz Mountains in Iran and located what looked like an enormous blackened ruin. Though some thought this could be an ark candidate, others remarked it could just be a mineral deposit. Most expeditions were sufficiently debunked as hoaxes. As one archaeologist said, "I don't know of any expedition that ever went looking for the ark and didn't find it." But one group made a shocking discovery in 2007 that changed everything. When a Hong Kong-based group called Noah's Ark Ministries International (NAMI) traveled to Mount Ararat, they found something some archaeologists are struggling to explain. About 13,000 feet up the mountain, NAMI explorers allegedly found large wooden compartments buried in the ground. And when they investigated the ruins further, they discovered something odd. The group tested the materials using radiocarbon dating, and the age of the wood was revealed to be about 4,800 years old, around the time Noah was purported to have built his ark. One scholar, though, was not so sure. Somehow believing both in the well-tested science of carbon dating and that God created the world just 6,000 years ago, he disagreed with their findings, purporting the wood should date back much more than 4,800 years. Others have different concerns. Mount Ararat as the ark's resting place is a modern concept, not specified in the Bible. The whole notion is odd because the Bible tells you the ark landed somewhere in Urartu, noted biblical scholar Jack Sasson. So what was the structure NAMI found? Some scholars believe the structure could be an ancient shrine dedicated to where some thought the ark could be. But even then, the wood should be much younger for one simple reason. The Bible hadn't been written 4,800 years ago. Though the findings hadn't been corroborated, Turkey planned to petition the United Nations to list the structure as a UNESCO World Heritage Site. They were, perhaps unsurprisingly, unsuccessful. Despite all the setbacks, NAMI stuck to their story. "We believe that the wooden structure we entered is the same structure recorded in historical accounts," said one member in a statement to the press, "and the same ancient boat indicated by the locals." So while no one can yet confirm the veracity of NAMI's claims, ark heads across the globe will continue to search high and low for signs of the biblical boat. And there are plenty of other biblical stories that experts are looking to explain too. While the ark may be out of reach, scientists have possibly cracked one of the biggest Old Testament mysteries. In the Bible's book of Exodus, we are transported back to ancient Egypt. After the Pharaoh refuses God's commandment to free the Hebrews from his rule, the all-powerful being in the heavens decides a wave of divine vengeance is needed. First came a river of blood. Then a waves of frogs, lice, and wild animals. A deadly illness killed domestic animals. Boils affected all the Egyptians. Hail rained down. Soon after came the arguably the most destructive affliction. A horde of locusts damaged the land. Herbs, fruit, and all the green of plants and trees were devoured. These infestations don't only occur in biblical times, however. To this day, the insects continue to target parts of the world. Scientists have looked for patterns that could explain why these locust swarms occur. As dangerous as they were thousands of years ago, the insects are still a major problem for farmers. Researchers believe the species of locusts that took flight back in ancient Egypt were possibly the Schistocerca gregaria, or the desert locust. It closely resembles a grasshopper, but there is a major difference. Locusts can travel for miles, plus they can fly. Grasshoppers only jump. And grasshoppers don't have another key ability. Locusts can remain independent or congregate into a gregarious state, otherwise known as their swarm method. According to National Geographic, swarms of locusts are capable of casting a shadow up to 460 square miles. For a better perspective, the entirety of Manhattan Island takes up only a little over 20 square miles. And these insects are far from harmless. The locusts come with quite an appetite, making them deadly to plant life, crops, and surrounding ecosystem. A single swarm can devour through 300 million pounds of vegetation. Is there any way to stop this calamity? Researchers believe knowing where these swarms approach would be the best way to protect the lands. During the mid-20th century, swarming occurred between 1926 to 1934, 1940 to 1948, and 1967 to 1969, with no real pattern discovered. While locust plagues affect many countries, it's African nations that have been most afflicted. A year with a large infestation results in food shortages, if not total starvation, for many communities. So modern biologists looked for links between locust attacks, past and present. While looking for a root cause between the ancient Egyptian outbreak, Ciro Trevisananto proposed an intriguing theory. A Canadian biologist, Trevisananto suggested that it could have been caused by a volcanic eruption rather than an almighty being. In 1646 BC, an eruption rocked the Greek island of Santorini. Its force was estimated to be close to 40 nuclear bombs. The ensuing ash fallout led to weather anomalies, making ideal conditions for the pesky locusts. Abnormal conditions were connected to more recent cases too. The United States hasn't been entirely safe from swarms of their own. Yet this time, it came from the locust's counterparts. Back in 1937, the state of Colorado saw the damage that grasshoppers could unleash as the Dust Bowl spread drought and storms around the region. During a time when the Great Depression drove up levels of poverty, struggling farmers in Colorado had to deal with the arrival of the hungry pests. Because farmland was already withering, the grasshoppers got creative. As time went on, it only got worse. The vegetation wasn't the only thing being destroyed. The grasshoppers attacked anything they could find. That meant fence posts, cattle hair, and clothing were all at their mercy. Colorado's governor called for a state of emergency, which brought forward the National Guard. Many thought the decision was an overreaction, but the governor's mind wasn't to be changed. The National Guard took the threat just as seriously. Flamethrowers were utilized on passing train cars. They did barely prove effective, though. The biggest benefit was that the tracks were cleared for better train travel. The residents of Colorado came up with a solution: introducing poison into the insects' food supply. Later, when the smell of decomposing grasshoppers became overbearing, the locals simply sold them as fish bait. Still, we struggle to find a long-term solution to these pests. While weather-controlling technology is a far ways off, researchers learned that high levels of serotonin are produced when locusts swarm and move to a new location. If the levels are altered, perhaps it would end their destructive paths. Could the insect plague of ancient Egypt finally be a thing of the past? If scientists determine a way to control this Saraten in response, then we could end the locust's reign of terror for once and for all. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to like and subscribe.